Have you ever wondered why discipline feels like an endless battle? Why, no matter how strong your willpower is, you constantly fail to maintain good habits and personal commitments? Maybe it's because we've misunderstood what discipline truly is. Maybe it's not a struggle of pure willpower, but an ancient system, a path forged over millennia, the path of the invisible warrior, also known as the Ninpo System. In our fast-paced modern lives, we're always told that discipline is the key to all success. Waking up early, exercising daily, continuous learning, and self-improvement. But after a few days, a few weeks, or sometimes just a few hours, that initial flame of enthusiasm just fizzles out. We blame ourselves for lacking willpower, for not having enough perseverance, and then we get trapped in a vicious cycle of disappointment and self-doubt. But the truth is, our brains aren't designed for discipline in the way we usually think about it. They're designed for survival, to seek comfort, conserve energy, and avoid any kind of danger or discomfort. That's why the usual methods of discipline, the ones based purely on willpower, often fail miserably. We're fighting a losing battle against our own primal instincts. Ben was a young man full of ambition, but he was also a classic victim of this cycle. He dreamed of becoming a skilled programmer. He wanted to master English to open up more opportunities, and he wanted a healthy body to feel more confident. Every morning, Ben would wake up with his determination sky high, picturing a bright, successful future. But by evening, he'd find himself mindlessly scrolling social media, snacking, and putting everything off until it was too late. Guilt, shame, and disappointment just kept piling up, eating away at his self-esteem and his belief in himself. Ben had tried everything, setting huge goals, making detailed plans, even rewarding himself with gifts for completing tasks. But all of it was just a temporary fix, a short-term sedative, and then everything would go back to how it was, sometimes even worse. Then one day, when he was at his lowest point, Ben stumbled upon an ancient philosophy, a completely different system of discipline. The Ninpo System? This wasn't a collection of quick tips or temporary techniques, not the kind of hollow advice you find all over the internet. Ninpo is a holistic path designed to transform a person from the inside out, turning discipline into a second nature that's powerful and unbeatable. It doesn't demand iron willpower from the very beginning. Instead, it creates an environment, a structure for willpower to form and grow naturally, becoming as strong as steel. The first pillar of Ninpo is Katsui, the public vow. This isn't just a promise you make to yourself, a silent thought in your head. Katsui is a powerful declaration that changes your identity in front of other people, forcing you to commit without backing out. After failing silently so many times, Ben understood that just promising himself wasn't enough to fight off the voice of procrastination. He decided to apply Katsui with full force. He wrote a long post on social media, not just for his friends, but for all his followers, publicly declaring his goals clearly and irreversibly for the next 100 days. I will study programming for 2 hours every single day without missing one. If I fail even once, I will donate a large sum of money to an organization I don't support and publicly admit my failure to everyone. It was a bold vow, a risky move, but it transformed failure from a personal problem into a social threat, an unacceptable shame. Once that vow was public, Ben's brain had no more room for internal negotiation, no reason to procrastinate. It had to act for his honor, for his personal reputation, and for the huge social consequences he had set for himself. At first, the feeling was terrible. Ben felt overwhelming pressure, the weight of everyone's expectations and judgment. But that very pressure became the most powerful motivation he had ever experienced. Every time he thought about giving up, the image of his friends and family who had read his declaration would flash in his mind. He couldn't disappoint them, and more importantly, he couldn't disappoint himself in front of them. Katsui forced Ben to step out of his comfort zone, to face his fear of failure head-on, and turn it into a sharp tool for continuous progress. With the Katsui vow set in stone, Ben moved on to the second pillar, the unchanging rhythm. Discipline isn't a random act. It's a series of systematic, relentless repetitions. Re teaches that we need to eliminate the element of time by sticking to a fixed, unyielding schedule. Ben decided he would study programming at exactly 7 p.m. every day. Not a minute earlier, not a second later. No changes, no matter what happened. No matter how tired he was, no matter what unexpected tasks or temptations came up, 7 p.m. was study time. He also set his exercise schedule for exactly 6 a.m. and his reading time for 9 p.m. every single day. Initially, sticking to this schedule was a massive challenge. There were days Ben was completely exhausted after work, days when urgent tasks popped up, or days he just wanted to relax. But he stayed resolute. And gradually, something miraculous started to happen. His body and mind began to learn and adapt. At exactly 7 p.m., automatically, Ben would feel an urge to sit down at his study desk. The feelings of hesitation, procrastination, and the whispers of laziness slowly faded away. His brain no longer had to waste energy, deciding, should I study now? Or I can just study later. The fixed schedule had created a solid track, a familiar path that helped him stay on course without relying too much on willpower. Ri had transformed disciplined action into a natural reflex, an essential, almost unconscious part of Ben's day. Once Ri had created an unbreakable rhythm, Ben moved on to the third pillar, kata, the perfect form. Kata isn't just about performing an action. It's about performing the exact same sequence of exercises every day, with absolute attention to every detail. In Ben's case, it was a specific programming learning path, broken down into small, clear sections, all arranged in a logical sequence. He didn't jump from one lesson to another randomly. He didn't change his curriculum halfway through. And most importantly, he never skipped any steps. He committed to performing the exact same sequence of exercises for at least 100 consecutive days. This is called the most rigorous training phase for turning an action into an instinct. Ben didn't just apply kata to his programming studies. He also brought it into his exercise routine. He picked a basic but effective sequence of exercises and performed them with the same number of reps, the same rest times, and the same precise technique every single morning. This precise, detail-oriented repetition might sound boring, even rigid, at first, but it's the key to transforming practice into instinct, engraving it deep into the subconscious. Once his body became perfectly familiar with every movement, every step, it no longer required his conscious attention. The practice became automatic, almost an unconditional reflex. This freed up Ben's consciousness for higher functions, for creativity, for solving complex programming problems, or for simply enjoying the present moment without being distracted by the must-do aspect of the action. He began to feel the freedom within the discipline. Ben started to feel a remarkable transformation. The first three pillars of Ninpo, Kitsui, Ri, and Kata had created a solid foundation, an unshakable system. He was no longer struggling with willpower. Instead, he was building a system, an environment where discipline was no longer a fight, but a natural flow.